what were you working on immediately before The Little Mermaid? How did you kind of come to this project?
We were working on a movie called The Great Mouse Detective, or as we like to call it, Basil of Baker Street.
Basil of Baker Street was the original title, and we wish it still had that title, but yes.
We were really upset about the title change, because you get attached to these titles. But that was a fun film to do. It was a smaller film, I think, and in the midst of Basil, actually Basil started before, I don't know, the big change at Disney that happened while we were working on Basil. There was a corporate raider called Saul Steinberg that was going to try to take over Disney, and if he was successful, I think he would have sort of split up the company and sold all the assets and would basically have destroyed Disney and made a lot of money in the process. But he was thwarted by Roy Disney, the Bass brothers, who...
Let's hear it for Roy Disney, yes.
None of us would be here. None of us would be here now. Well, we'd be somewhere, hopefully, but...
That's right.
So that happened in the middle of Basil of Baker Street, and then Roy brought in Michael Eisner and Jeffrey Katzenberg. We had been working on The Great Mouse Detective for about 2 years and then had to pitch it to them. At the same time, around the time that Great Mouse Detective was really going into production, and it was done in about a year, Michael Eisner gathered a sort of group of us together in what he called the Gong Show, which was a thing he brought over from Paramount, where it was like a brainstorming session. And he got a bunch of the directors and story guys together and said, "I want you to go out and find 5 new ideas for projects, and in 2 weeks we'll pitch those ideas." And so we did. I took that seriously. So I actually went out. I looked for ideas. I came up with 5 ideas. But the first idea was this idea about The Little Mermaid. I was looking for ideas, and I walked into a bookstore the evening after all this, and was just looking through books of fairy tales, and I just came across The Little Mermaid in a book of fairy tales and started reading it in the store, and just thinking, this is really kind of an amazing story, and it's so visual, it's very cinematic. I wonder why they've never done this. And then I got to the end of the story, and it was like, well, maybe I understood why, because it's a very sad story. I always say it was sad and got sadder and sadder, and then she died in the end, and that was a little depressing. But I sort of fooled around with it and was just trying to think of a way to kind of give it a happier ending and still kind of keep what the essence of it was. So when we got back 2 weeks later, when we went around the table, I pitched actually Mike Eisner said, just pitch your best idea. And I pitched The Little Mermaid, and actually it got gone, because at the time they were doing a sequel to Splash, and this was not that long after the Tom Hanks film Splash. But then I got a call 2 days later from Jeffrey Katzenberg, who had read through the treatments, and they put it in development. They wanted to develop it. They thought it had potential. That's kind of how it got started.
And that was in 1985, January of 1985.
All right, some fans may know that there was a Danish illustrator in the late 30s and early 40s named Kai Nielsen who produced some concepts of the Hans Christian Andersen tale. Can you tell a little bit about how...
Kai Nielsen, you guys are Disney fans, you should know this, and I hope you do, but he worked on Fantasia. He did the great Night on Bald Mountain sequence. Those designs were sort of his designs of Chernabog, the devil, and all those sort of spirits and all that. And he came out here and actually worked here at the studio back in the late 30s. They had entertained the possibility of doing a Hans Christian Andersen feature, but we didn't know that when we were first working on The Little Mermaid. It was Vance Gary, great story artist, and before that he was a layout artist, and he was sort of a veteran. He was older than we were, and he knew of these drawings, and he said, "Hey, have you guys seen these drawings?" Once we got going, and we said no, we had never even heard that Kai Nielsen did any drawings. So we went to the archives, fortunately, and to the and they had the original drawings. There were little pastel studies and charcoal drawings and watercolor drawings, and we pulled those out of the archives and we put them up on storyboards, and we had them as inspiration for us as we made the movie, and they were brilliant.
We were lucky that nobody swiped them, but so it was all original art.
I think the intention might have been to do a Hans Christian Andersen sort of package picture with a bunch of shorts that would be under the big umbrella of Hans Christian Andersen. I think one of which would have been Little Mermaid.
I think the Snow Queen was also part of that.
Yeah, whatever happened to that old story?
I'm not sure. They might have had to just let it go.
Yeah.
I had to, sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Kirk, he's here twice a night.
So that must have been very exciting to come across this artwork and think, wow, maybe we can integrate.
We did. There were, particularly I'd say in the storm sequence, there's some visuals in the storm sequence that are pretty much off what Kai Nielsen did that are in the movie.
They're very striking, sort of graphic black and white drawings. There's one of a boat up on a wave, very sort of stylized and silhouetted. I remember at the time, Terry Gilliam, the director, came through Disney because Tom Wilhite was sort of wooing Terry Gilliam to do a project at Disney. And he came in our rooms, Tom brought him by, and he saw the drawings up on the boards. And he was like, wow, are they going to let you do it that way? You know, because he's sort of the iconoclast and the rebel. And we said, we're going to try and get some of that into the movie, which we did try and do, particularly in that storm sequence. So, but he's a brilliant artist. If you don't know Kai Nielsen's work, please track it down. It's fabulous.
So getting into the early kind of production stages, where were you physically located? What were your production offices like? What kind of
Office is too generous of word.
In this period that we're talking about, when the big change came, when Ron Miller, who was Disney's son-in-law, who was running the company, he actually left the company. Roy Disney, who had left the company, came back. Michael and Jeffrey were there. One of the first things they did, because they were really focused on live action when they came, and that's what all their experience was live action. They hadn't really worked in animation. So at that time, we worked just right across this theater. We were in that building over there that still says animation on it, and that's where our offices were. And at that time, they decided to move animation off the lot, and we were all moved to a building in Glendale, kind of a warehouse in Glendale, and it's the building right now where animation research is.
It's right across the street from Imagineering on Flowers Street, although that's where we did the bulk of Great Mouse Detective, the actual production. But when we went to do Little Mermaid, they put trailers in the parking lot of Imagineering. So we were in these trailers, like about 5 trailers stuck together in one little trailer pod. It was the craziest thing, because there was, whenever anybody would walk into those trailers, the suction of the air, somehow the whole trailer,
Every room
it was like a big, massive sheet metal flexing that would go on. So it was a little distracting while you're working on the film.
But there was something kind of fun about it, because it was just a small group of kind of us and the story guys.
There's a handful of people.
And
Howard Ashman had an office
Right,
there. And then the storyboard artists, many of whom have gone on to direct films. Roger Allers, who did The Lion King, was one of our storyboard artists, and Matt O'Callahan, Brenda Chapman, who did Brave, and you know, it's just it was sort of an all-star team of story artists that were with us in that trailer. That
you brought up Howard Ashman, and I think I've heard a story before of you guys hearing him and Alan composing through the door. You know, what was
right, that was actually before the trailers.
Okay.
Just in terms of history, like while we were finishing Great Mouse Detective, and we had finished Great Mouse Detective, and we were actually flying to New York to do a little promotion on the film, and that's when we met with Howard for the first time. We met with him at the Helmsley Palace in New York, and we had taken this 2-page treatment that I had, and John and I had expanded it to like a 12-page treatment, and Howard had read the treatment, and we had not met Howard, although we were very big fans of Little Shop of Horrors, so we knew who he was, and we, for 2 days, we kind of went over the treatment and spotted the songs, and Howard had a lot of ideas, including the weird idea, which we've talked about before, making our Clarence the Crab, our stuffy British crab. Howard had this crazy idea of turning him into a Rastafarian, but then we were a little shocked at first, but then he explained kind of what he was trying to do with bringing contemporary calypso elements into the musical score, and then that was a great idea. So,
but ultimately, in that Flower Street building, Howard and Alan did take up residence to write some of the other songs, such that when we were in that building, we moved back out of the trailers into that Flower Street building when we were really animating the movie. And Howard and Alan they literally would bring us into a room, and you could walk by the room and you'd hear the sounds.
No, it was actually before we went to the trailers.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Well, either way, I think it was probably
we were doing the story after.
After they wrote all the music?
Under the Sea was still being boarded by Gary Trousdale.
In the trailers?
No, in the Flower Street building, and Howard and Alan were in the office next to it.
That's what I'm saying. That's
right.
what I thought I said. We were in the Flower Street. We
hadn't moved to the trailers yet.
Oh, okay. It's all blurred to me. It's 25 years ago.
25 years ago.
That must have been pretty exciting, though.
It was amazing. It was, because the building wasn't that soundproof, so you could just hear the music coming out of that room all the time, just as they were walking by. And like I say, while they were writing Under the Sea in one room, guys were boarding it in the room next to them, and we thought somehow this is what it must have been like in Walt's time, where the music was sort of written right on the lot, right in. I mean, Walt's office was called the music room because there was a piano in it, and composers worked there.
Yeah, it really goes back to the 30s when all the shorts were done sort of to a track, and they had bar sheets that actually marked out all the musical beats. And so the director's rooms at Disney were always called music rooms for that reason. And so in a way, this was kind of a throwback to the 30s system of having an in-house composer, a musician right down the hall who could interact with story and visual people, which was great. It was, fabulous.
This actually leads us to another member question. This was one of the most asked questions we got from all of you.
Boxers or briefs?
What's both of your favorite memory working with Howard Ashman and Alan Menken?
Oh, gee, there's so many, but I would say one of my favorite memories, at least the first one that comes to mind, is our second trip to New York to meet Howard for the second time and meet Alan for the first time. We also saw Smile on that trip that Jody Benson starred in. But we went, I think, like our first day there, when we arrived, it was wintertime, it was around Christmas, and we went to Howard's flat in Soho, and we met Alan, and they had written a song. They had a song ready for us, and they performed Part of Your World for us. This was still really early in the course of the movie. It was the first song written. And it was just really exciting. That's a big memory for me.
I mean, there were a lot of memories, because I actually remember the other end more. So when we went down to Walt Disney World when the movie was done, and they had a big parade already, before the movie was released, they had sort of tailored some parades to fit with Mermaid. And I remember we were walking up, and this girl was sort of dancing the whole time. I thought, wow, look at this girl dancing to the music. And I realized, no, that's Jody Benson that's dancing to the music there. But because she was there for the press junket. But Howard got to see the parade there, and he was very moved to see the parade because I think he knew that he was sick at the time, and he saw maybe this music was going to outlast him even. So that's one of my sort of favorite memories of Howard, his being moved at that.
We didn't know that at the time.
We didn't. Yeah, we found that out a year later. Really, it wasn't until the movie won at the Academy Awards, and that was the night of that. I think is where he first told Alan about it, and we didn't hear about it until even after that. Yeah.
That night of the Academy Awards, when they won both for song and score. That was another really sort of memory.
I remember when we were out for the Golden Globe too, and we lost to the. Was that where we lost to the Rollicking Comedy Driving Miss Daisy?
The movie lost.
The movie lost.
But the score and the song won.
But Little Mermaid was up for Best Comedy or Musical, so Howard and I were the producers, so we would have had to go up and say something. We had never even talked about what we would say if it had won. We were pretty sure it wasn't going to win, but. And then I was almost relieved. Well, thank goodness it didn't win. We don't have to go up there and talk. But yeah, Driving Miss Daisy, that wacky comedy, and all those musical numbers, one after another. Hum me the theme of Driving Miss Daisy.
The music is good, but yeah, it won for Best Comedy or Musical. It was more of a comedy than a musical.
Yeah, it was great when they did win the Oscar, and they went up there, and Howard did his joke about making fish jokes and everything. He was very excited to win. I mean, it was a big thrill for those guys.
Well, speaking of fish jokes, I understand there's a humorous story about when you took the film to Cannes.
Well, there is one. We took it to the Cannes Film Festival after the movie was done. This is in 1990, May of that year, and it was going to be a big showing. They had a big inflated. Cannes is, it's in France, and it's every year. They have at that time it had been every 2 years, but they have a big international film festival. So they were going to show Little Mermaid there, and they had a big inflated mermaid in the harbor. We met the French publicity people as we drove in. We drove in. They said. She said, all of Cannes is waiting for the Little Mermaid. And we were like, really? Wow, that's... So we drive in, and there's this big inflated mermaid there. Of course, what happened, eventually, she sprung a leak or two, and so by the end of the festival, she would throw like this. It was like she was giving a Nazi salute, which was terrible. Because actually Cannes, that's where the Nazi headquarters was in World War II. The Gestapo was in Cannes. So it was a terrible thing all around. But what really happened, that is true. But when we had our big celebratory dinner, we were all with Roy Disney and Patty Disney. There were 10 of us, and Ron and I and our wives were all sitting around the table, and it was a big formal dinner, and all the stuffy French waiters came, and they with their vests and their towels and all that, and they came to lift the silver-covered dishes, and they all in unison lifted up the dishes, and there on everyone's plate was a crab. And we just, and the waiters, what, you do not like our food? What, no, you just cooked our leading man,
Well, speaking of other foreign adventures, I understand you had a run-in with the Queen of Denmark.
Well, I wouldn't call it a run-in. I did go. Speaking of Roy Disney, yes, I went on a European press junket with Roy Disney to promote the film. This was about a year after it had opened, and the film premiered in Copenhagen, which is where The Little Mermaid and Hans Christian Andersen are from. And of all the places we went, got interviewed a lot that day by a lot of the press in Copenhagen were a little bit sensitive about the way the ending had been changed of Hans Christian Andersen's story. And I remember one reporter said to me, it would be as if we took Gone with the Wind and had Scarlett O'Hara and Rhett Butler stay together in the end. And I hadn't felt a lot of guilt about it until that time. And I was starting to feel more and more guilty as that day went on. And that evening, after the screening of the film, at the premiere, I met the Queen of Denmark. And I actually apologized to her for what we had done to Hans Christian Andersen's story. And she said, oh, he never knew how to end his stories anyway. Now it has a proper ending. And
so she was not only a queen, but she was a diplomat. So,
Well, kind of, I think, speaking for everybody here, what has surprised the two of you the most about the legacy of the film over the past 25 years?
I mean, certainly that it's still around. I mean, when you make this film, you make it for yourself. Really, you're not making it for some unseen, these wonderful people here. We're happy that they enjoy the film, but you're really trying to do things that entertain yourself, and you're hoping other people will think likewise. So I think the music, I certainly think the story and the father-daughter story of it all, the fairy tale nature, and the music has been so, we heard the music 1,000 times when we were making the movie, and we never got tired of it. I mean, we always loved those songs. And I think the music has really given it some of its lasting power, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, these films, they take a long time to do. That film took about 4 years from beginning to end. A lot of people worked on the movie. They all involve so much work and so much effort. So you always hope they'll kind of stick around. It kind of makes it feel like it's worth all the effort and time. And certainly with that one, it just felt it's really great. I think it's just to see that the legacy continues and people still see the movie and like the characters. It kind of makes it all worthwhile.
Certainly, Disney's involvement with Howard Ashman and Alan on Little Mermaid led to them doing Beauty and the Beast, which was such a wonderful film, and each film, and then Lion King after that. Each one of these films, and Aladdin. Oh yeah, that one in the middle. They each sort of built on the audience of the one before it, so it was really a kind of a golden time here, and everyone was sort of supporting each other and trying to learn from the past films and incorporate those, and we were all challenging ourselves.
We were all much younger then, and I know when we first started at Disney, we were just big Disney fans. I mean, I was a huge Disney fan growing up.
And there was no D23 then. I know, it's hard to believe.
But I loved Pinocchio, and that got me feeling like I wanted to someday work at Disney. But when we started, I think there were all these young people, a lot of people in their 20s that came to Disney all around the same time because the doors had been closed for years and years, and they started opening the doors in the 70s because they decided, particularly after the success of Jungle Book, that they actually wanted to keep animation going. They weren't sure if they were going to do that for a while, and then they decided, well, this is probably worthwhile. So I think when we all started at Disney, our dream or our hope was that somehow we'd be able to work on some films that would resonate and have some lasting value, like the films we loved growing up. And we were just sort of hoping that might happen one day.
Well, I think you resoundingly did that with this movie. And, well, I think that kind of a big question that everyone is wondering, what's next for you guys? What's coming up?
Well, they did an announcement a couple of weeks ago. I think Amy Astley, who's sitting here, was involved in that, the publicist. And we're working on a new animated feature called Moana.
We can't talk too much about it at this point. I mean, it's a little different than The Little Mermaid, but it does have a young teenage girl and the ocean. So in that respect, they do have certain things in common.
It's it is set 2,000 years ago, and It's been fun. We've been storyboarding it where we've kind of done, it's been written, and now we're just getting into some animation tests and things like that. It will be out in November of 2016. We hope you all go see it. We hope you all like it. We don't really know exactly what the movie's going to be because we're still working on it, but we hope it'll be good.
But it's really fun, and it's a really exciting project, and we've been having a lot of fun working on it.
Well, I think we're all anxiously waiting to see what shows up. Our last question is going to be, is there anything you want to say to the fans to tee up the movie before we get going?
Well, first off, thank you all for coming. It's great to see all you here supporting this movie after 25 years. I know there's at least a few people who did not see it 25 years ago. I'm willing to maintain that I see a couple here, and I hope you enjoy the movie if you haven't seen it before. To tee up the movie, I don't know. It's a fairy tale. It's Hans Christian Andersen. It's about 86 minutes long. What else do I need to know?
And it has some fun songs.
Yeah, and long live Howard Ashman and Alan Menken. So.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you.